He just lost the biggest fight of his life. He's standing in the middle of the octagon, sweat and blood still fresh on his face, a microphone pointed at him. Millions of people watching, waiting to see if he's going to break down, make excuses, or blame the judges. Instead, he says something that stuns the entire arena into silence, then into applause. What Ian Machado Garry did in that moment is the reason people are still talking about him days later, even though he didn't win. Let's go back to the beginning of that night and walk through exactly how he got there. Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Saturday, August 15th, 2026. Inside the Xfinity Mobile Arena, the air was thick with noise, nerves, and history waiting to happen. This was UFC 330, and in the main event, the UFC welterweight champion Islam Makhachev was defending his title for the very first time against a challenger who had spent years talking about this exact moment. That challenger was Ian Machado Garry, a fighter from Ireland who calls himself the Future, a nickname that either sounds like arrogance or like a promise, depending on whether you believe him. By the time the final horn sounded that night, Garry had lost. Unanimous decision. Islam Makhachev's hand raised. A new UFC record set, 17 straight wins, one better than the legendary Anderson Silva. For most fighters, this is the part of the story where the cameras cut away, where the loser disappears backstage, embarrassed, frustrated, maybe even angry. But Ian Machado Garry didn't disappear. He stood right there in the cage, picked up the microphone, and gave one of the most talked about post-fight moments of the entire night. And to understand why his words hit so hard, you first need to understand what he had just been through to get there. Let's rewind the tape a little further, back before fight night, back to why this matchup even existed in the first place. Ian Machado Garry had been building toward this for years. He wasn't just some random name plucked out of the rankings to fill a spot on a fight card. He earned this. Just months before UFC 330, Garry stepped into the octagon against former welterweight champion Belal Muhammad in Doha, Qatar, and delivered one of the best performances of his career. He outstruck Muhammad for 15 straight minutes. He stuffed every single takedown attempt thrown at him. When the final horn sounded on that fight, Garry didn't just win. He made a statement. And in the moment right after that win, standing in the cage with a microphone in his hand and the whole world listening, he looked into the camera and called out the champion by name. He told Islam Makhachev to come find him. He said he was the best welterweight on the planet, that he was ready to take the throne, that nobody else deserved the next shot at the belt more than he did. It was bold. It was the kind of statement a fighter makes when he genuinely believes what he's saying, not just for the cameras, but deep down in his bones. The UFC granted his wish. The fight was made. Islam Makhachev versus Ian Machado Garry for the welterweight title in Philadelphia. Now, if you don't know much about Islam Makhachev, here's the short version. This is a man who trained his entire life alongside Khabib Nurmagomedov, one of the greatest fighters in UFC history, a man who retired without ever losing a single fight. Makhachev built his own legacy in Khabib's shadow, and then stepped fully out of it, becoming a two-weight champion, grinding down legend after legend with a mix of suffocating wrestling and sharp, dangerous striking. Coming into this fight, he had won 16 fights in a row. One more win would tie him with Anderson Silva's all-time UFC record. 2 more would break it. Garry knew all of this. He knew exactly what he was walking into. A 5-inch height advantage and a 4-inch reach advantage gave him tools that most of Islam's previous opponents never had. But height and reach don't fight the fight for you. Somebody still has to walk forward, absorb the pressure, and find a way to win. On fight night, Garry walked out first. Confident. Loud music. That same swagger fans had grown used to seeing from him. Chin high, eyes locked straight ahead, moving like a man who had already decided in his own mind how this story was going to end. Then Islam Makhachev made his walk, calm, quiet, almost eerily still. A man who had already fought this fight 1,000 times inside his own head. The bell rang, and the fight that followed turned out to be one of the toughest tests Islam Makhachev had faced in years. Garry used his reach in the early rounds, popping jabs, circling, making the champion work just to close the distance between them. He wasn't just standing there waiting to be taken down. He was moving, thinking, adjusting. But Islam is relentless. He found his openings, closed the distance, and eventually put Garry on the canvas in round 1. Garry fought back hard in the scrambles, using his length to create space, fighting to get back to his feet, refusing to just lie there and accept whatever position Islam wanted to put him in. Round 2 brought one of the most dramatic moments of the entire fight. Islam caught Garry with a hard head kick in a clinch exchange, a shot that visibly rocked him, snapping his head back and forcing him to recalibrate in real time. For a split second, the entire building held its breath. This looked like it might be the finish, but Garry didn't fold. He absorbed the shot, cleared his head, and kept fighting. That single moment, more than almost anything else that happened that night, showed everyone watching exactly what kind of heart this man carries into the cage. The fight rolled on like that for 5 full rounds. Islam controlling the pace, mixing wrestling with striking, never letting Garry get comfortable for more than a few seconds at a time. And Garry kept surviving, kept scrambling, kept looking for that one opening that could change everything. He never got it. Not enough of it, anyway, not enough to convince 3 judges sitting cage side. But he never stopped trying either. Then came round 5, the final round. And this is where something happened that would end up defining the entire night almost as much as the record itself. Instead of coming out swinging, trying to find a desperate finish in the final 5 minutes of a fight he was clearly behind on, Garry rushed toward Islam Makhachev in the center of the octagon and hugged him. The 2 men embraced for a moment before separating and trading strikes for the rest of the round. It was a gesture of respect, one fighter acknowledging another, a moment of genuine sportsmanship in a sport that doesn't always get enough credit for having any. But not everyone saw it that way. UFC President Dana White, watching from cage side, was visibly frustrated by the gesture. Speaking afterward at the post-fight press conference, White made his feelings clear. He said that if Garry had shown even a little more killer instinct in that final round, instead of hugging his opponent, he might have come out swinging for something dramatic, a flying knee, anything that could have changed the outcome. In his eyes, that embrace cost Garry a chance, however small, at pulling off the upset. It's a fair point from a coach's perspective. In a sport built on split-second decisions and razor-thin margins, hesitation can cost you everything. But it's also worth remembering something important here. Ian Machado Garry has never been the kind of fighter who separates competition from character. He talks trash before fights. Sure, he's confident, sometimes even cocky, but once the cage door closes and the bell sounds, he fights with respect for the man across from him. That's not a flaw. That's who he is. And what happened next, after the final horn, after the judges tally their scorecards, proof that even more. The scores were read: 49-46, 49-46, 48-47. All 3 judges siding with the champion. Islam Makhachev had done it. 17 straight wins. A new UFC record, one better than Anderson Silva's mark that had stood since 2013. The arena exploded for the champion. But then the microphone found its way to Ian Machado Garry, and everybody watching, whether they were rooting for him or against him, leaned in a little closer to hear what he was going to say. He didn't make excuses. He didn't blame the judges, didn't complain about the scorecards, didn't try to convince anyone he'd actually won. Instead, he opened with a simple greeting to the crowd, almost casual, like he was talking to a group of friends instead of a sold-out arena and millions of people watching at home. He said tonight just wasn't his night. He said he felt like he'd fought a great fight, that Islam had simply been better than him. And that was okay. Think about how hard that is to say. Think about standing there, minutes after the biggest loss of your career, in front of the entire world, and choosing honesty over excuses. A lot of fighters in that position lash out. They blame the judges, they blame bad luck, they blame anything except the man standing across from them, who simply outperformed them that night. Garry didn't do any of that. He took the loss on the chin, in every sense of the phrase, and he did it with his head held high. He kept talking, and his voice carried a kind of quiet fire underneath the calm. He told everyone watching, everyone who loves him, everyone who supports him, and wants to see him succeed, that he was going to be back. He said he wasn't disheartened. He said, in his own words, that he was bulletproof in his mind. He reminded everyone that he's still only 28 years old, still building, still climbing, and that he had just gone 25 minutes with a man many consider the greatest fighter the sport has ever produced, and pushed him to the absolute limit. There was real pride in the way he said it, not the fake, forced kind of pride fighters sometimes perform for cameras, but something that sounded earned. He talked about being proud of himself, proud of his team, proud of everything they had built together to get to this exact moment, even though the moment ended in a loss on the scorecards. He said no one was going to stop him. And then, in maybe the most respectful part of the entire interview, he turned his attention to the man who had just beaten him. He congratulated Islam Makhachev directly. He praised his team, told them they'd done an amazing job, and said he had nothing but love and respect for everything they'd built in this sport. He'd told Islam that to his face already, backstage, before he ever grabbed the microphone. This wasn't a performance for the cameras. This was a man who genuinely meant every word. He closed things out by looking toward the future, which, fittingly, is exactly what his nickname promises. He said there were plenty of exciting matchups still out there for him in this sport, plenty of fights left to have, and that he and his team would be back, better than ever. Take a step back for a second and think about what just happened in that cage. A man lost the biggest fight of his career, on the biggest stage of his career, against a fighter who just broke an all-time UFC record. And instead of anger, instead of excuses, instead of bitterness, the world got humility, respect, and genuine hope for what comes next. That's not something you can fake convincingly in front of millions of people with adrenaline still pumping through your veins and your face still swollen from a 25-minute war. That reaction has to be real. Later, away from the noise of the arena, Garry posted a longer message on social media, echoing much of what he'd said inside the cage, but with a little more time to reflect. He repeated that he felt great about his performance, that Islam had simply been the better man that night, and that this wasn't the end of his story, just another chapter in it. He again praised Islam and his team directly by name, again showing the kind of sportsmanship that doesn't always make headlines the way trash talk does, but absolutely should. Now here's where the story gets even more interesting, because not everyone was satisfied with a gracious loss. Dana White's comments about the fifth-round hug sparked a real conversation across the sport. Some fans agreed with White completely, arguing that championship fights demand a killer instinct that never lets up, not even for a second, not even out of respect. Others pushed back hard, arguing that sportsmanship like Garry's is exactly what the sport needs more of. That respect between fighters doesn't make someone soft, it makes them human. Both sides make a fair point, and honestly, that tension between respect and ruthlessness is part of what makes combat sports so fascinating to watch and talk about. What can't really be argued, though, is the resume Garry built on that night, even in defeat. He went 5 full rounds with a champion many consider the pound-for-pound best fighter on the planet. He rocked him with strikes at times. He survived a fight-altering head kick without folding. He made Islam Makhachev work harder than he had in years. When the judges scored at 49-46, that number tells you the fight wasn't as close on paper as it felt inside the cage that night. Garry made this fight far more competitive than a cold scorecard could ever properly capture. So what happens next for Ian Machado Garry? The welterweight division isn't slowing down anytime soon. There are dangerous fighters circling that title, men like Michael Morales and Carlos Prates, both hungry, both building their own cases for a title shot. And then there's Shavkat Rakhmonov, the very man who handed Garry his first professional loss years earlier, a fighter Garry has openly admitted still lives in his head, someone he genuinely believes he could beat if they ever crossed paths again. That rivalry alone could fuel Garry's path back toward another title opportunity. Most expect Garry to take some time to recover, physically and mentally, after a fight that demanding, before stepping back into the octagon, likely toward the end of the year or early into the following year. Whenever that fight happens, expect the same version of Ian Machado Garry that showed up in Philadelphia, confident before the bell, respectful after it, and absolutely convinced, deep down, that his story is far from finished. Because here's the thing about Ian Machado Garry that this entire night proved beyond any doubt. Losing a fight doesn't automatically mean losing yourself. He walked into that cage as a challenger with a nickname that promised big things. He walked out of that cage having lost the fight, but somehow gained something else entirely: respect, admiration, and a whole lot of new fans who weren't necessarily rooting for him before that night, but couldn't help but respect the way he carried himself once the fight was over. That's the real story of Ian Machado Garry's Octagon interview at UFC 330. Not a story about losing. A story about how you lose, and what that says about who you really are underneath all the confidence, all the talk, all the bravado that gets a fighter to the biggest stage in the sport in the first place. On that night, in front of the whole world, Ian Machado Garry showed everyone exactly who he is. And if his own words mean anything at all, this is only the beginning of what comes next for him, not the end.